Welcome to Conversations on the Coast, San Francisco's premier author interview program. Today we are going to talk about an absolutely fascinating and in some ways terrifying novel. It is called The Fifth Vial. The author is Michael Palmer. The publisher is St. Martin's Press. And Michael Palmer, thanks a lot for joining us.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks, Jim.
You've written 12 of what your publisher classifies as medical suspense novels. This is number 12.
Number 12.
That's what they say. And The Fifth Vial, and this is fascinating to me, joins all its predecessors on the New York Times bestseller list.
Well, it's exciting to have this happen.
Yeah, congratulations. Amazing.
Thanks very much.
Now,
I'm just pleased to be here.
Great. Also like its predecessors, The Fifth Vial touches on issues of social importance. For example, the book that was made into a movie most recently, Extreme Measures, that dealt with human experimentation. And Silent Treatment dealt with insurance company greed, side effect with infertility. And this one, either with illegal organ theft and or the whole business of transplants. Those are the issues at risk here, are they not?
Yes. I got the idea initially from an article I read in the New York Times about illegal organ traffic, not so much theft. You may or may not know that organ trafficking is illegal in every country virtually in the world. It is not legal to sell your organs, whether it's on the internet or through an organ broker, and there are many of those. But there is also not a lot of legal pressure to stop it for a number of reasons. One of which is that it appears to be on the surface a victimless crime, because here's a person who needs money, and here's a person who needs an organ and has money, so who gets hurt? And when I read the article, I was quite appalled to realize that there is a victim, and generally speaking, it's the poor person who donates the organ or who sells the organ. And I became fascinated with the whole issue of organ transfer and determined to write a book about it.
Now, why do you say that the donor is likely to become victim in these situations?
The reason is that by and large, these people are from third world countries. They're very often people of color. They're operating through usually an organ broker who will come to their village and promise them, let's just say, $10,000, which is an actual amount that's often promised, in exchange for their kidney.
Okay.
Which is the organ that is most often sold. And these people who are not educated expect either a job or expect good medical care or expect a lot of things that aren't delivered. And even if the money is delivered, which it often isn't, they have no idea how to use $10,000. It was reported in the article that some of them might buy a television set. When in fact they don't even have any power in their home.
Yeah.
And so they go back to their villages. They're humiliated often. They did not get good medical care, and many of them have chronic pain in the areas where their operation was done. And so they're clearly, is a victim. It's almost the same as if a broker came to town looking for the attractive young women and promised them money in exchange for services.
I got you. One of the other things central to the plot is the business of blood samples and what happens to them, particularly to the sample that has the green top.
Well,
is the green top made up or?
No. The green top is the green top.
Okay.
We've all had blood drawn, and we know that the rubber stoppers on the top of the tubes that are drawn are different colors. There's red. There's many different colors, actually. And the color corresponds to the anticoagulant that's inside the tube. In the case of green, it's heparin that's inside the tube that keeps blood from clotting.
Okay.
And so when I started to think about planning a thriller based on what I had kind of read in the New York Times, the place I stopped was right there at, I actually had gone to a lab to have my own blood drawn.
Okay.
And I realized two things. One is that I never look at the technician. I look at the ceiling. I don't want to watch the person actually.
You've been watching me when the blood's been drawn.
Putting the tourniquet on me and then putting a needle in my arm. So I never look. And then I started thinking about, well, supposing that this company that was drawing my blood drew an extra tube on me.
Uh-oh.
A tube of blood. And supposing the technician was instructed to draw it, but thought that it was for some kind of quality control.
All right, hold on there for a minute. The fifth vial takes us from the United States to Africa to Brazil and into the minds and hearts of some fascinating people.
Oh, bless you.
We'll meet some of them when we come back.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
Best-selling medical thriller author Michael Palmer. He's the guest. The title of the book, The Fifth Vial, it's a novel published by St. Martin's Press, and a woman by the name of Tess Gerritsen, who wrote a book called The Mephisto Club, says, "From knowledge comes power, and from power, temptation." Michael Palmer's The Fifth Vial is a tale set at the very edge of our medical knowledge and of a thrilling heroine who confronts a theft that haunts me still. I loved it. One of the thoughts I had in reflecting on the novel is that there's something very interesting going on. The bad guys, the consummately evil people are many, and they're very rich and they're very powerful, and confronting them are a couple of three or four by comparison, not well off and simple and direct people. And it's a very interesting battle. Well,
as I was constructing the novel and started first with the stuff that we talked about, which was basically having blood drawn from clients at a massive laboratory with offices on every street corner, and having an extra tube drawn on each client and sent away basically to a laboratory where these clients are all tissue typed, like millions of them, and their tissue typing is put in a massive database. Oh. And once I got that idea, then I had to begin to think about not only whose book is this, which you just referred to, but why is this being done? Exactly who's into what? And
what are they getting out of it?
Exactly. I began to focus on the surgeons who do the transplants around the world, and the fact that most of the time these surgeons have no control over who gets the organs that they transplant. And because there's lists, and those we've all heard about the kidney list.
That's right.
Somebody's down on the list, and many people are on a list for, say, a lung or a liver or a kidney or a heart or a lung, or another organ, and they never make it to the top of the list. They die before an organ can become available. And I thought that was fascinating, that the surgeons don't have a choice in the matter about who receives these organs.
Wow.
And so what I began to think about is, well, supposing they were frustrated, supposing they knew that the organs they worked so hard to harvest from people and to set up this surgery, supposing a heart transplant person goes and starts smoking again, or a liver transplant starts drinking again, which happens just because we're all human.
Yeah, all of which could make doctors try to set up a different system where things would be more perfect. And that's what is the plot of the book. And facing those forces I described is a young medical student from Boston by the name of Natalie Reyes, also an Olympic runner.
Natalie is part Cape Verdean, and she is not the usual medical student because she started life as a runaway, living in cars, and has sort of a street tough, arrogant streak to her.
And she can't keep her mouth shut.
No, she can't. She starts the book by getting suspended from medical school in her last year, and because of talking back to a resident and actually stepping around the resident to try and treat a patient that he had already discharged.
Out in the jungles of Cameroon is a man with a totally put together moral sense of the world and his mission, Dr. Joe Anson.
He's a saintly person who started life as a playboy in South Africa, but gradually heard a different calling and is now working and living at a medical facility in the jungles of Cameroon, and is on the verge of completing research on a drug that could make a huge difference to the world in terms of cancer therapy and wound treatment and healing.
Joining them is a marvelously drawn, reluctant hero and investigator, Ben Callahan.
Oh, thank you.
A magnificent stumbler.
Well, Ben's lives in Chicago and started his adult life as a social studies teacher. He got fired because he spent too much time with the students, not enough time on the paperwork. And this is his second career, and he's failing at his second career because he wanted to be a detective like Rockford on the Rockford Files.
Yeah.
And like the other heroes he reads about in fiction, but it turns out that all he does as a detective is chase around unfaithful husbands and wives and take pictures of them.
Oh, dear me. Well, I have advice for all of you out there. Do not start the fifth vial at night, for it is guaranteed to keep you awake and thinking. When we come back, we'll talk about the author's story. It will also keep you thinking.
You're listening to Conversations on the Coast with Jim Foster. Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC, or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.
This is Jim Foster. It is Conversations on the Coast. The Fifth Vial is the title of the novel we're talking about today with the author Michael Palmer. And one of the people who I think really like this book is Iris Johansson, author of On the Run. Brilliant, she says. Brilliant storyteller. Michael Palmer is at the top of his game and gives us a compelling and thought-provoking tale that will have you looking over your shoulder. It's both realistic and terrifying, and as I indicated, it will keep you up all night. So she agrees with me. It will. It will.
Thank you.
Great read.
Now, Iris.
One of the things that confused me, it was the stuff that your publisher sent out. Of course, it often confuses me. But in the press release material, in your little bio box, it says that you, Michael Palmer, are a former doctor. Then I look at the picture on the back flap of the jacket, and it says, Michael Palmer, M.D. So what are you, Michael?
Oh, I'm both. I'm an M.D., and I'm not a former doctor. I'm a current doctor.
Okay.
Certainly, writing is my vocation now.
Great.
But I never stopped working as a physician, and at present I still work for the program in Massachusetts that helps sick doctors.
It's called the Massachusetts Medical Society Physician Health Services. When you say sick doctors, sick in what ways?
Well, with mental illness, with physical illness, substance abuse, behavioral problems. Our job is to help physicians to confront the fact that they're sick, and then to develop a treatment program for them, and then to document the fact that they're in recovery from whatever their problem happens to be, and to enable them with the help of monitors at work to enable them to return to their practices.
Now, the deep backstory here is that you yourself had difficulties with some kind of addiction, and you say, I decided to share my experience, strength, and hope with other addicted doctors, and over the past 27 years have helped hundreds, if not thousands. Many of those I have helped have gone on to do invaluable work in the field, and all of them are better physicians for having faced their illnesses and recovered.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, you did say it.
I did say it.
You did say that yourself. But I mean, what's fascinating to me and what I really like and I appreciate, I think, is that you have this vocation of writing these medical thrillers. There's much more to what you do as a person and a doctor, and you're willing to be an advocate for things. For example, in the author's note to this book, you talk about the situation with the donation of organs, and what is it you encourage people to do?
Well, you spoke about at the beginning of the interview that I tend to want to focus each of my books on an ethical and moral medical issue. And whereas organ theft is certainly an issue, organ donation is a bigger issue. And I was worried when I wrote a thriller about organ theft that I might frighten people out of becoming or being an organ donor. And that was the last thing I wanted to do. I wanted to just entertain people and raise the issues about how critical organ donation is. So I finally decided to write a note at the end of the book, just answering questions about organ donation and basically saying, and I'll read to you from one sentence from the book where it says, almost every one of us would opt for a transplant to save our life or that of a loved one. Acknowledging that fact, it is nearly impossible to believe that the vast majority of us haven't registered to be donors in the event that illness or trauma renders us clinically dead. So I'm just advocating everybody, because we would all accept an organ if our life depended on it. The question then becomes, well, would you donate an organ if you were in a position to have to do so?
Now, there's another realism note, the very end of the book, where there is an organization described in the book which is very similar to something called Organs Watch.
That's located actually in Berkeley. It was started by an anthropology professor from Berkeley, Nancy Shepard Hughes, and she basically has formed a watchdog agency to travel to various countries and try to expose rings that prey on third world citizens to take their organs in exchange for money or services. And she's doing a wonderful job, although the amount of stuff that's out there is massive compared to the amount of resources that she has available.
I think this is a novel with rich dimensions.
Thank you so much.
And Michael Palmer, you're to be congratulated for your writing, for your other work. The book is called The Fifth Vial. The author, again, is Michael Palmer. This has been Conversations on the Coast, and I'm Jim Foster.
Follow us on Twitter at Jim Foster COC, or send an email to jimfostercoc@gmail.com.